I guess our main principle is to really try to keep things simple and try to say no to most things. And if you're deliberate and consistent enough with these rules, you can accomplish quite a lot of meaningful work with just 2 or 3 people and without having to work like more than 35, 40 hours per week.
Welcome to the Exponential Scale podcast, the show where we talk about how tiny teams with big ambitions are doing more with less, scaling smarter, not harder, and building businesses with teams that can fit around a dinner table. I'm your host, Ron Schmelzer, and we have special today for you with 2 guests from DatoCMS. This is a really very interesting company because not only are they growing and scaling with a small team, but they've been very visible. They've been sharing information about it. And that's actually how I found them. They had a post recently on Hacker News, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I'd love to get their insights and share it with you, our audience. So we have the founder of DatoCMS, Stefano Verna, who is founder and CEO, and also Matteo Giaccone, who was the 3rd team member and is the master of all things product there. And just to give you a little bit of background and insight into why they're here is that they're a company that really disproves the idea that scale requires a massive org chart. Their DatoCMS, if you've never heard of them, is a developer-first headless content management system that's used by fast-moving teams to manage content once and ship it everywhere. They can produce websites, apps, products, marketing pages. If content needs to move fast without breaking things, DatoCMS is involved. And here's the interesting part. While many SaaS companies spend a lot of their first few years hiring and restructuring and realigning priorities, DatoCMS did something much more radical. They stayed lean and grew revenue, customers, and product velocity. According to their 2025 look back, which we'll link to in the show notes, this is a business generating serious financial results with a team small enough that meetings can still fit in one calendar view. So no layers of management, no headcount theater, no growth at all costs chaos, just a small disciplined team with strong systems and a clear bias towards leverage over labor. So this isn't a startup story about hustle or heroics. It's a micro team story about building infrastructure that scales while the team stays intentionally small and sane. And what makes these guests really awesome, DatoCMS is the perfect guest to talk about for this podcast about scaling without hiring and winning without bloat. So let's get into it. Matteo and Stefano, thank you so much for joining us on the Exponential Scale podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
So maybe first, let's have you introduce yourselves let's just talk a little bit about yourselves, maybe Stefano first and then Matteo, and then tell us how you got here to where we are at this point.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stefano. I'm the co-founder, actually, of DatoCMS. Right now, I handle, let's say the most technical stuff, and I lead the development team, while Matteo basically is doing everything else. Yeah, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'm Matteo. I started working at DatoCMS doing support. Initially was the first thing that was needed apart from development. And then I did a bit of everything. So sales, security, a bit of partner program, and a bit of infrastructure. I have a background as a software engineer as well. So I was doing the technical stuff on the side while dealing with a bit of everything else and setting up the teams and the people to do everything around that it needs to be done around the product.
Yeah, we have a big history. We've been knowing each other since the university, actually.
2007, probably 6 or 7. Yeah.
So that helped a lot in having the right vision and
Yeah.
So basically, about Dato, without getting into much details about the product itself, because I don't think that's the focus here. But I wrote our first line of code in 2015. So we actually turned 10 last year. And DatoCMS started inside an agency, a web agency where I was the CTO at the time. And I've always worked in web agencies, and over the years, I tried like every possible solution to build small to medium websites quickly enough while keeping them maintainable over time and not be too expensive for the end customer. So I tried basically everything from WordPress to custom Rails backend interfaces and everything in between. And that was my last attempt. So static site generators were starting to gain some traction at the time and seemed like a really good solution for many of the problems we had at the company. So I started building the product for our company, and that's it. And yeah, so there was like the static site generator part, which was handled by existing libraries, but we also needed like an easy to understand headless CMS for the editors, and one that again wasn't too expensive either, and there was none. So I tried to build it. Yeah, so we started using it for our own clients, and after a year of iterations, I tried to release it to the public. We did no marketing at all, but we were lucky enough to be like in the right place at the right time with this product. So we caught like the train at the beginning of the Jamstack movement with Netlify and Gatsby really taking off. And also technology research firms like Gardner and Forrester really pushing strongly towards this kind of architecture. So yeah, so things grew really slowly at the beginning. So for 2 years, I was the only one working on the product and part-time. And it took like 4 years before we became like ramen profitable, let's say. So able to pay ourselves the same amount we were earning at our existing jobs. And the actual Dato company was founded only in 2019. So separating it from the agency. From there, things started to accelerate beyond our control, honestly. So in just 1 year during COVID times, we reached like 1 million euros in revenue. And we were just 3 people at the time. So Matteo, me, and Irene, which was another developer. Now we're 13 people from Italy, Germany, and US working remotely. And we've been growing pretty much linearly by 1 million euros in revenue per year. So now we are at 6.5 million. And people are actually using us a lot. So we now handle 3.5 billion API calls per month. I have a network of 200 web agencies using the product. And yeah, we're still shipping a lot, almost with no marketing effort. It's mostly people loving the product and recommending it to others because it's better than the competition or cheaper sometimes. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's a great story so far. So for those of you who are listening in and doing sort of the mental math, up to about $6.5 million and ARR revenue, 13 people, that's $500,000 of revenue per employee. That's one of the metrics we love. It's not just the revenue, it's revenue per employee, because that's how you know you're maximizing everybody in the company. And I think this is really a great story. I'm actually looking at the blog post right now. For those of you that are listening, I'll link it to you. It's hard to look at a post on an audio podcast, but let me tell you about it. When he says it's linear growth, I'm looking at that chart. Looks pretty linear. It is a line. It's a slope. You could probably give that to middle school students and tell them to even do the y equals mx plus b and calculate the slope angle on that. Just keep it going. Now we know that's not how businesses always grow linearly like that. Hopefully, maybe it starts to even curve up a bit. But yeah, Matteo, maybe as you were part of this, as you were sort of in this journey, like how have you seen it? From being part of this company, this growth, and maybe you could talk about it, especially since you did some support. You were listening to the customers.
Yeah.
What was really, what did you hear from them as to what was really helping grow this product?
Yeah, I think the surprising thing to me at the time and still now, I'm getting used to it, but still new people coming in every day is still crazy. and it's been word of mouth since the beginning. Like that's been our marketing, basically. People being very happy about the product, and I think an important part was the approach, especially when doing sales and support. I think we still do the same right now, which is being very honest. We don't want to oversell. We want to help our customers. We have plenty of stories of people that have been helped by our support team. It's a bunch of lovely people that are going to help you and not help the company for sure. So we always try to minimize the overages. If you do extra traffic, extra API calls, we jump in your code and help figure out where the problem is. Like being helpful and honest, and not, we never touch existing contracts. So once you get a plan in, we don't raise costs. We just did once when the inflation was ramping up everywhere. Everyone was raising costs. We did a little bit as well, but you can stay on your plan forever. We still have people on existing on plans that were available before I joined, like 6-7 years ago, and are still there. And so I think our approach has been appreciated, and we have very loyal customers that talk well about us. And especially in the agency world, people are moving from one company to another, and they bring data with themselves. So we've seen this happen multiple times. And so the word spread, and more sites are built with DatoCMS, and it's a great pleasure.
Yeah, that's a great story. For our listeners, you know that we also have a newsletter, the Exponential Scale newsletter. And in the newsletter, we wrote about Grant Lee, who is the CEO of Gamma, a very fast growing AI startup. Some of you may know them. They have the AI powered presentation platform. They just raised a lot of money. So they're not quite a micro team anymore. They actually don't fit this mold that we're talking about. They're now pursuing the more standard Silicon Valley hypergrowth path, which is a whole other different direction if you want to go that way. But interestingly enough, before they raised this round, when they were getting this customer traction, it was almost all of it coming from word of mouth. And, maybe Grant should listen to himself now as they're trying to do things that are not organic growth. They're spending a lot of money on advertising, and now they're doing celebrity endorsements. It's getting a little out of control in my perspective. But I think, what he was saying was that you shouldn't spend a penny on marketing unless your customers are actually pulling you along. Because if your customers aren't sticking with the product, if they're not endorsing the product, if they're not recommending the product, then all the money you spend on advertising will just go out the door when the customers leave as well. So I think you're also proof positive to the power of a great product with a great customer audience, really listening. And for our listeners, I think this is also one of the benefits of a small team, because when you have a small team, everybody is much more directly connected to the customer, because there's not layers of hierarchy. The CMO is not 10 layers removed from the customer. So I think this is one of those positive benefits. So that means that customers, for our listeners, I think if you're a customer of a company like DatoCMS, you can find a much better customer experience than being a customer of a much larger organization, despite their traction.
Yeah. Also, the possibility of talking directly with us is something that you don't have with a big company, or it's much more difficult. You need to be a much bigger customer. We talk with everybody still now. If a customer wants to have a chat, we can do it, and we still do it now. But especially at the beginning, all the development of the company was very much steered by the needs of our customers. So we were building one feature after the other based on the feedback we were receiving. It was essential to decide what to work on next. So, and still now we focus on feature requests by customers, but especially at the beginning when the the product is less mature, I think it's essential. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, so Stefano, as you were growing the company, so it was just you.
Yeah.
And then you added, it sounded like at some point you added a co-founder because you're from founder, co-founder, and then you added the rest of the team. How are you thinking about those aspects of growth? How are you thinking about the not just the product side of growth, but sort of the team side of growth, and maybe you might feel the desire to, add on the marketing and sales and things like that. So how are you thinking about the scale, that linear scale you have right now, which maybe can go even start curving up even more positively linear? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so personally, I believe that the bigger a team gets, the less fun it becomes to manage a company, but also to work inside that company as an employee. So you need to start adding more meetings, more procedures, more coordination. You lose focus. And maybe you have to introduce rigid HR policy. Basically, you start slowing down, and that's not fun. It gets boring. People start looking for other places where they can feel they have a much bigger impact. And personally, I really like shipping things fast, and I really don't like managing people. So, and if my employees can change company, I can't. So I guess that's our main guiding principle. It has to work for me, and I look for people that kind of share that same vision. So until we hit like a real ceiling, or some particular task becomes extremely boring and repetitive and cannot be automated, we try not to hire new people. Instead, we focus on making the existing team happy, so we don't lose them. We don't lose all the experience and context that we together painstakingly built up over time. So we have a very generous profit sharing system that's been in place for years, for example. So for us, it was never like about avoiding hiring as some sort of strategic business decision. It's simply about like preserving what we know we love in our work. So it's totally an egoistic choice, if you want. And it turns out this can also be a great way to build a company without putting yourself under too much pressure and making a lot of profit. But that was never really the original reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something we haven't really spent too much time talking about on this podcast. When people think in terms of small businesses, usually it's just a couple of people. So there's not much profit sharing because the owners are the business. So, when you're a freelancer, you don't think about profit sharing. And of course, the Silicon Valley model doesn't think about profit sharing either, because that's more equity focused and it's the growth of the company. And you end up
Yeah.
putting your profits back into the company anyway. There are no profits, especially if you watch the Silicon Valley show on HBO. That funny scene about
Revenue. No.
revenue, let alone profits. They don't want to talk about revenue at all. But so it's interesting. We haven't really had too much of a conversation about profit sharing, which probably is much more aligned to the micro team model. Do you want to share maybe some insights into how you go about it? Maybe some advice for others who might be thinking about that sort of same structure for themselves?
Yeah, sure. Actually, we copied the format from another Italian company, which is Balsamic, which again,
I know that.
it's like 15 years into the business. So kudos to them. So yeah, they have been they had like this profit sharing formula for a long time, and it was really simple and easy. It's on their website. It's on our website too. So you can read it, and it's not like extremely complicated. It's just like a mixture of experience you had in the company, regardless of the role. So how much time you worked for Dato, and and what else? What was it? I don't remember. But yeah, it's a very simple formula, and it grows with our profits. So right now we are sharing like 6% of the profits of the company to 13 people. So yeah, I think that really helps, like putting everyone on board like for real, not because maybe someday in the future you will get something, but every day, every month, you get your part of what it's the common work we made so far. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, well, I'll research it and put that in our links as well for those who are listening, so you can read more about it. I think that's great. I mean, give people an incentive to keep growing the business and be part of it, and not feel also maybe that they're in a company that they look longingly at companies with stock options. You know how that is. So I think this is really very positive. So it's great. So let's talk a little bit about processes. When you're a small team, everybody has to be much more efficient. Obviously, the story today is all about efficiency with AI and automation, but it's more than just tools. Sometimes it's also processes and methods and templates and standard procedures. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, which processes have you put into place, or technologies that, if you want to talk about that have really maximized the team's efficiency. I don't know if Stefano or Matteo, whoever wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess our main principle is to really try to keep things simple and try to say no to most things. And if you're deliberate and consistent enough with these rules, you can accomplish quite a lot of meaningful work with just 2 or 3 people, and without having to work like more than 35, 40 hours per week. Even now, I've never asked a single employee to work overtime, and we, the bosses, are the first to close at 6 p.m. and start again at 9 a.m. So unless they're real emergencies, like everything is on fire, that kind of emergency. So this super basic principle applies to everything, starting from shipping new features. So we never work on projects that can take months without being shipped or tested on the market. We try to reduce new features to the bare minimum and just keep our options open for further improvements. For example, we almost always start from, like Matteo said, real user requests and issues. So also that it's trying to keep things simple. People are asking for something, let's do that instead of inventing something extravagant. But that also applies to support and sales. So from the very start, we built a self-service product. So we created an extensive documentation, examples, SDKs. So nowadays I calculated we respond around like 15,000 support requests per year, but most of them require like only quick replies. So our support team is made of engineers. So there's not like passing the ball to other developers to figure out things. They're perfectly capable of solving issues themselves. And they generally just need to share the relevant URLs from our documentation. So the reality is that despite having around 8,000 monthly active users, most of the time our support team, which is made by 2 people, by the way, has not enough work to do. So they build plugins, they improve the docs, they fix little bugs, etc. So
that's really very interesting. You'd think how many users do you have currently? You said quite a few, right?
And the customers?
Yeah, I forgot you mentioned the size of the customer base, and I just forgot what that number was.
Yeah, sorry. It's 8,000 active users, which is not really customers because maybe one customer has many people, many editors. So it's not, it's proportional, but it's not the same. Yeah.
Okay, so several thousand users and 2 support people supporting several thousand users on a developer-oriented. The product is oriented towards developer-oriented. So I don't know, does that mean that it's usually more intensive support when the support is needed, or less intensive because developers tend to know maybe more of what they're doing than a casual user?
Depends on the kind of developers you work with. If they and now we geared more and more towards bigger development teams, more experienced customers, and it's always better. Especially at the beginning, we had a lot of freelancers or small teams, and also the ecosystem around the Jamstack static websites has evolved a lot. At the beginning, it was a new thing, and there was a lot of explaining. Now it's much more settled, and so it's easier in a way, and we have more experienced customers as well. So that's better. Something else I wanted to add regarding and the focus on the product. We delegated a lot to external suppliers for many services. So, for example, all the billing is done by another service. It's called ChargeBee. All the hosting at the beginning, we were on Heroku, a platform as a service. So we didn't manage any infrastructure. We just recently moved to something we manage ourselves. So we delegated everything. It wasn't the core product itself. So we were 100% focused on our code, like the value added we could create. And also support and sales, all these procedures were really the bare minimum. So at some point we tried Salesforce because we were on Heroku, acquired by Salesforce, and so we got contacted by them. We tried. It was really too much for us, and we are still using like a front, which is basically a shared email address where we do support, and it works well enough. Surely it's not perfect, but we built some tools around. So for support, it's easier to understand what's going on with our customers and give proper support and feedback to the devs. So we built a bit of instrumentation and tooling around the product itself, but it's all stuff that we managed. And so yeah, overall, it's a growing code base and it's ours. So it's easy to move and to change while we delegate everything that is not core to us. I think this is very important for also people who want to start, just focus. And now I think it's even easier than a few years ago. You can do so much by delegating everything to something else, and with AI it's even easier. But even without, I mean, we are still using it very little at the moment.
Yeah. That's actually one of the, we call the scale maxing rules. Now, the rules of how do you maximize your scale while still keeping your team small is to leverage as many outside resources as possible. So you're talking about some of the technical capabilities, these technical platforms, but it also extends to working with partners and, trying to get more of the community involved and more self-service and getting your customers even to, do some of the heavy lifting. Some of the high scale companies that we've profiled, of course, the most shocking one is OnlyFans, which of course has a very interesting reputation, but they have this ridiculous $37.5 million revenue per employee that they're doing there. And it's in part because they're basically a platform. I mean, they're not really, a lot of the heavy lifting is being done by their customers, but it actually extends in so many other places too. And so the more you leverage that, the more you're like, wait a second, instead of me hiring 10 people to do this thing, can we get our customers to do it? Can we get our partners to do it? Can we find some way to automate it or whatever, or delegate it in some other way? Whether it's delegated to a person or delegated to a machine. So it's really very insightful that stuff you've been sharing.
Yeah, our agency partner program is very related to that because once a web agency enters and knows your product, it instantly becomes like a multiplier because they, of course, have to build a lot of websites. And if they choose your platform, it means that they probably will be around the product for a long time because, of course, it's an investment for them. So we tried quite early to try to set up this partnership with web agency, which is a business that we know a lot about. We both worked at web agencies for most of our previous careers. So yeah, for us that is one of the biggest leverage tools we had. And also like trying instead of like finding ways, marketing wise, original ways to find new customers, we also tried very much to stay on the wave of the Jamstack revolution, let's say. So at that time, there was not that much competition compared to now in terms of headless CMSs. And Netlify and other companies really needed like working examples, like a complete setup that works. So we tried very much to stay in touch with frameworks that were very popular at the time and try to use them and their forces to let people know about us, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really very important. It's funny because as a developer myself and a content producer now, which is interesting, so I'm at this really interesting, weird intersection. For a long time in the past, I was very much on the WordPress platform. That was like the most popular platform for sort of quasi content producers with a little bit of technical capability. It's all PHP, basically, MySQL. But it's funny, like even myself, I've kind of like shifted away from that. I'm like, I don't really want to be a WordPress administrator. I don't really want to be managing plugins and security, holes. And I'm kind of wondering, actually, this is sort of sidetrack here, but WordPress for a while was like 70 or 80%, like some ridiculous percentage of content platforms. I'm wondering now if you have more of a finger on the pulse here, but I'm wondering if that's been changing now that people have been seeing all these other platforms for producing and distributing content.
Yeah, not so much actually. WordPress, I think they peaked 2 years ago and now they're like slowly decreasing, like 1% per year, but they're still super strong. Yeah. And I mean, I get it. There is a huge ecosystem around the product. Everyone basically in the game knows about WordPress and it gets the job done. I mean, it works. It might not be like the best solution for some specific scenarios. For example, when it comes to scalability, having huge spikes of traffic, etc. But for a lot of small websites, it's still a solid choice. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know. And I'm sure everybody's evolving, especially now with AI. I think I saw some recent announcement now that you can just tell it what you want your theme to be or something, and it'll make it work, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So let's get back into the micro team things because not everybody is focused on that. One of the there are a lot of folks who are building sort of product oriented companies. It's one of the great things you can do as a micro team now is have a product, whether it's a SaaS product or some other kind of product, and leverage so many tech tools and technologies to grow. But people are thinking about how to get attention. That's like the hardest thing right now. That it's really easy to create, which is great, but the side effect is that it's really easy to create. So everybody is creating. It's much harder to get attention. So maybe you could talk a little about this. For micro teams that are building these developer-first products or product-led, growth, product-led marketing, how do you focus? How do you try to get attention in this world? And then we'll talk a little more about the team size later, but attention is the big question.
Yeah, I think it's something that we still haven't really figured out because as what we say before, like for real, people are coming to us because they knew about us via some other clients or customer, etc. So we still haven't found like a real formula to gather attention at our will, let's say. And of course, it's difficult nowadays because, as you said, making new things, it's extremely easier. Of course, that this means like a lot of competition, not only product-wise, but attention-wise. How can you let people know that your product even exists right now? So I think it's the building part, it's definitely easier, but the reaching out to people, I think it's going to be a problem. Yeah. And Also, the social media channel is not working as it was working before. Google is not working as it was working before in terms of visibility. It's becoming more difficult just to throw money at the problem and have some returns back. People are, I guess, OpenAI and other competitors will soon offer ads within the product, which scares me quite a lot, to be honest. In this specific moment in time, I know for a fact that it's extremely difficult to find a channel that works. Yeah. And the only thing we try to do is to be consistent, try to be transparent in what we say. When we write something, it's because we really feel it's something valuable. And I guess that's the only way right now to gain some traction and some confidence from people that actually knows that if you write about something, it is worth to read it, for example.
Yeah, it's not AI slop that nobody wants to read. I mean, we don't want to read it either. I think one approach we always had is it something we would like to read, we would like to use ourselves first? So I find it incredible that so many people write stuff that they don't want to read it either. I mean, if you're not the first customers of yourself, it's a bit ridiculous. So that surely it comes back to being honest, being human and personal. I think that's underrated for me, especially when you start having your first customers. It's really important to listen to them, talk to them, understand what they need. I think it's what made us make so many decisions during our history. And something else that also Stefano said that I think has been very powerful for us was integrating within the existing ecosystem and serving bigger customers, bigger companies of the ecosystem like Netlify, or integrating with existing frameworks like Next.js has been very instrumental for us. And all these bigger companies are happy to have use cases to show products that integrate well, especially for us that we are a developer focused company. We need to integrate with many other tools. And so the more you do, the more marketing done also by others you have. And we come back to the previous topic where we delegate what we don't know how to do. We are still figuring out.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, you got my attention. That's actually how I reached out to you. It's interesting because the blog post got my attention, but of course I wouldn't have even found the blog post if it wasn't on Hacker News. So it's kind of, the content plus the channel plus the authenticity that kind of worked together. And maybe it's a little bit of a tip off because, if you're a frequent reader of Reddit and Hacker News, like I am, or like you're on LinkedIn, it's like this constant, barrage of everybody trying to get your attention. But then every once in a while, something cuts through the noise. And it's becoming more and more the authentic voices, the sort of not vulnerable, but the people who are genuinely trying to share, like, hey, this is my experience, the good, the bad. I'm not just trying to put polish on it. We're at an interesting place in humanity right now in general, where I think trust is becoming much more loose. People are not trusting institutions. They're not trusting people. And you had an interesting conversation on a previous podcast where someone's like, you can't even trust that when you're sending an email to someone that person is actually writing the email, they're sending it to you. Really destroys a lot of trust. So I have to tell you firsthand that it got my attention because it felt genuine and it felt direct, and it felt relevant, obviously, to what I was focused on. So do more of that. That worked out.
Yeah.
We'll try. Yeah.
So let's get into a little more process here. Okay, we're kind of cruising through. You guys answered a lot of questions. I have a list of questions, and we just answered a lot of them just sort of as part of our conversational flow. But let's talk a little more about sort of as you're planning. One of the other challenges that we've heard from other folks is it doesn't matter the company size now. Honestly, it's hard to plan more than 6, 9, 12 months out because the world is changing so much, not just geopolitically, which is nobody can predict the next 12 months there, but technologically, it's hard to predict where things are going to be. So how do you go about planning? How do you involve your customers in the planning process? And of course, back to micro teams, how do we do so in a way without thinking, oh, I'm going to have to staff up and multiply team size? You have to, all this kind of comes together as part of the process.
Yeah, well, basically, we've been using this, let's say, framework by Basecamp, which is called ShapeUp, which is very interesting, and it was we thought really fitted into our position. And I really suggest if anyone didn't ever listen about this to check it out, because it's not like this huge architecture around processes. It's more like geared towards small teams that wants to ship things fast. And it's very product oriented. So basically how it works is that you have these six weeks cycles, and with projects that are defined high level, high enough that developers can still try to figure out the details and move around the details to ship in time. If the specs are too detailed, it could be a problem for the developer to really be able to ship something. So if the shipping part is the most important part, you have to sacrifice something else, which is, for example, scope. So it's a framework around this idea. And you have the development team working on predefined specs, and the ShapeUp team, which is composed by me, Matteo, and our UX designer, which is also Matteo. Yeah, trying to figure out in those 6 weeks which are the most interesting ideas. So we kind of try this idea and then the other ones. And in the last week of the cycle, we basically have what is called like a betting table, which is us deciding which are the pitches that are going to be developed on the next week cycle. Sorry. And another thing that's really interesting for me was the idea that every cycle starts from scratch. Like you don't have like this huge backlog of previous ideas that you need to reread, reevaluate, etc. Once you close a cycle, everything is wiped out. You might decide if someone is really into some idea, they can of course like resubmit the same idea, but it's not like the inverse approach where everything always stays relevant and you have to like this huge mental burden when you have to decide what you want to do. So yeah, the interesting part is that very often one idea that seems like super urgent in one cycle, the next one is like completely gone from the radar. So that's been very helpful for us. Before this, using this framework, we were struggling a bit because the shaping up part was not really a clear process. Like now we have some real quality time to think about what we are going to do. Everything stays more organized. Yeah.
That's great. I'm going to link to that also in the show notes. So
yeah.
Read more about the ShapeUp methodology. This is good. This is good. These are all, as you listen to more and more of these podcasts, there are all these different methodologies and these frameworks and these tools. So this is fantastic for our listeners. So I just encourage our listeners to, if you aren't, you can subscribe to the Exponential Scale podcast, but also the newsletter. We cover a lot of these topics there as well. So I think we're going to go into our rapid fire now. We always ask the same 3 questions for everybody because everybody has so many great things to suggest for maybe tools and processes and other tips that maybe people haven't heard before. So if you're ready for it, we'll do the rapid fire. And you can, since there's 2 of you, if you have different things to suggest different things. If it's the same, that's perfectly fine. So we'll get into the tools. So what's one AI tool or automation that you absolutely can't run your business without? The one that gives your team the 10x leverage every single week?
Yeah, for us right now, no single AI tool is like essential. We ran fine for 10 years without them, so I'm pretty positive about that. Real leverage comes from making everything self-service, for example. As Matteo said before, try to have servers and other vendors doing the non-core stuff for you. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I agree. The same. And maybe a small addition is building the small tools or small integrations that you need to make your data flows between one thing and the other. So you keep the glue yourself is the most intelligent part, but delegate as much as you can.
Fantastic. Interesting. So best AI tool in your cases, no AI tool. So, but it goes to show that you can still scale significantly with a small team without AI. There's no dependency on AI for that. Well, great.
Of course, now we are using AI tools quite a lot and they're super powerful. But yeah, it's not like vital so far yet.
Do you have any tools maybe that you're like, oh, this is useful. It's not we're not dependent on it, but it actually has been helpful. Maybe something that people weren't even aware of, like, oh, I didn't aware that tool. It doesn't even have to be AI. Sometimes it's some other automation or some platform tool that it's like a great wrench that you use whenever you need a wrench, right?
I don't know. We are using in Dato Cloud Code for some development at the moment, and also help. Personally, I'm using it to create small scripts I can run to extract data. That's been very, very useful. Like it helps me write complex Postgres queries, some Ruby code around to extract data. It's been very, very helpful to understand better what's going on within our data.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a game changer for me personally.
Great. So let's move to processes. Put tools aside for a moment. Let's think about the ways you work, the processes, your methods, your practices. This is, again, some advice you might have for others. So what's one system or process that you think every small team, micro team, should have in place by the time they hit at least $1 million in revenue that separates the folks who are grinding, that is the grinders who are just working hard on everything. So getting to $1 million was hard. Getting to 2 million will probably be twice as hard. So what do you think the process or system they should put into place that separates the grinders from the scalers? Or maybe something you should tell them to stop doing, or maybe something they should start doing today if they haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I think there's no really like a magic recipe for everybody, but for us, like something that you need to have sorted out is to stop getting lost into minutia and try to really to simplify everything massively as hard as you can, and try to have like clear priorities. Like for example, if at this moment in time you're not making money, does it make sense to optimize performances or getting lost into some, again, detail that you don't really need? And really having a small team really helps, really forces you to select and be quite strong in your decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, something that I think it's, if you see us, it looks like we have shipped features that weren't finished, weren't fully finished with all the things that seems essential. And so because we say, okay, we have this amount of time, let's ship at the end what we have. And so you can sacrifice something that seems essential, but it isn't. And so we get rid of it and say, okay, let's see if anybody complains about this. most of the times nobody complains, and then you ship the feature in like 20% of the time, having done 80% of the feature, like the classic rule. It works all the time. And can we ship this without building all the accessories? And most of the time is yes. And we've been doing this forever, and that's, I think, one of our superpowers, probably.
That's fantastic. Simplification, prioritization. I like that. Really good
Yeah.
philosophy. I guess the last final lightning round here is tips. So if you could give one piece of advice, I know we've already given a lot of advice here, but maybe something that we haven't yet said, one piece of advice to a founder who's running a very small size team right now, who wants to scale big, maybe what's your final word of advice for them?
Well, I say don't. Like, it should not be the end goal to have a huge scale. I don't find that much value in that. And often all you do is like raising this anxiety problem that you're inflicting yourself. So I think it's very important to try to find joy in doing something that works and not chasing like numeric milestones, or we need to go there in X months, because that's really creating a lot of anxiety, and you can't control anything actually. So it's better to stay focused on short term, and yeah, that's it for me.
I agree.
Well, that's good. Well, it's obviously done you guys very well because you found the joy and you're scaling. So
Yeah.
I would say much success to you all because it's obviously working very well. And I think that that's a good, positive vision. I think for folks who want to scale, they're thinking about growing beyond just themselves and building something sustainable, and that may be sustainably growing. And I think for the folks who look at the chart on the blog, you'll see something that is indeed sustainably and scalably growing.
Yeah,
So much more to you.
we never put ourselves in a position where we could really feel this anxiety. So again, like in the beginning, it was just me part-time and for a lot of years. And that was totally fine because I didn't put all my expectations and money on that thing. So I could literally go on as long as I enjoyed doing that. And if you keep on insisting on this idea and this, I think it can really help. Also, doing the right decisions for you, not just what everyone else says. It should be right. It's really important to have like this alignment between what you are and what your company will be like.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I think for all of our listeners, it's been a fantastic podcast episode, like about 50 minutes or so. So this has been great insights here, and we're going to package this all together and, listen to this a few times. And of course, check out what DatoCMS is doing. I want to give a big thank you to our two fabulous guests who have provided a lot of great insights and visibility. So thank you very much, Stefano and Matteo, for sharing with our Exponential Scale podcast audience.
Thank you
Thank you very
Ron.
much.
So, listeners, here's your mantra for the week. Don't just grow your team, keep your team engaged and happy and invested, and find the joy. That's kind of where we ended up here. I think find the joy. Don't chase scale for scale's purposes only. Grow because you want to grow and because your community is helping you grow. So if you loved this interview with DatoCMS, I really want you to hit the subscribe button and leave a review and share it with the one small team founder friend who's still wondering how to grow to whatever size they're looking to grow with that small team that they have already. And you can get a lot of interesting insights here and some philosophy as well. As mentioned, I will share many of the notes here, including the blog post, the DatoCMS and Balsamic profit share we mentioned here, the ShapeUp methodology, and other things we discussed. Thank you again, everybody, for listening, and stay tuned and be subscribed. And always think big, stay lean, and scale smarter. Micro teams aren't the future, they're the now. If this episode got you fired up, hit that subscribe button, share it with your crew, and join the movement over at scalebrate.com. That's SCALEBRATE.com. Till next time, think big, stay lean, and scale smarter. Because you're not a tiny team, you're a micro team with mega potential. So get exponential, and thanks for tuning in to the Exponential Scale podcast.